If you have an opening statement, Ernst, as to the validity of astrology, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the blanket statement I use is that astrology is never at fault. It's always the astrologer who makes the mistakes.
That's probably true.
You know, and one of the things that when it comes to all this occult stuff and spiritual stuff these days, everyone is expecting these things that are floating around are the absolute perfected forms of these things. But the reality is they're really not. All the sciences really are in a big state of decay, whether they're occult sciences or material sciences, medical sciences. We're really at a place and time where we are developing these sciences after a lot of decay in the dark ages. First of all, astrology is not available as a perfected form. There's a few people who are really trying to perfect it, but 99% of the people walking around calling themselves astrologers are just satisfied using really what it comes down to a systems of astrology that are not that need a lot of work still. And they do that in Western astrology, Vedic astrology, any type of astrology you name. So it's not that Vedic astrology is better than Western astrology. It's really how deep is the astrologer going? How thirsty is the astrologer for knowledge? And just like in your field, you're like crazy about nutrition. And there's a lot of nutritionists out there who aren't crazy about nutrition.
Right. Yeah.
And when someone talks to them, they're going to get a completely different experience than when they come talk to you about nutrition. And it's the very same thing when you go to astrologer. So the second thing I'd like to say is to not blame Western astrology or Vedic astrology or Egyptian astrology or Greek astrology. Blame the astrologer that's right in front of you that did a good job. Blame him for doing a good job and blame the bad ones for doing a bad job. Because it really is only that astrologer that makes the mistake. And we have a lot to learn. And one of the sad things I find in astrology is that a lot of people like to walk around thinking that they have this perfect system of astrology, just like, Jehovah's Witnesses walk around thinking Jehovah's Witness religion is perfect.
Yeah.
There's no perfect religion out there.
No.
And there's no perfect system of astrology, but there's a few people who are trying to push the envelope, and I happen to be one of the people who tries to push it. I find a big problem is that a lot of astrologers simply don't go deep enough. And for an astrologer to really impact a person, they have to go really deep into the person, or they have to make really amazing predictions. And that's hard to find astrologers who can do that consistently and all the time. The other thing is, at the end of the day, we really are set up to have the experiences we're meant to have. So one time we go to an astrologer, we have a profound experience. Another time we go and we don't have a profound experience because it's not what our life was calling for. It's not what the divine has set us up for. And sometimes the divine sets us up to have a terrible reading because somehow that's what we need to take the next step on our journey.
Maybe force us to look into ourselves instead of asking someone else.
Yeah, and that it does it that sometimes. And I remember really one of my most fondest readings. I was back when I lived in Encinitas, and I ran out of the house. Excuse me, I was walking down the street, and the woman comes running out of the house. Ernst, Ernst, I need you. Well, she didn't need me for anything really great, but she wanted me to read her chart. So she
Of
asked me,
course.
"Can you read my chart?" So I say, "Sure." And I walked to my house a couple blocks away, grabbed my computer, came to her house, and I looked at her chart. And she told me she was devastated over this breakup. And I looked at her chart and I said, next year, you're going to have your best relationship. The relationship that's going to work is going to happen next year. And I gave her the date, May of next year or something. I don't remember what month. It was about a year away. She said, "Oh, okay, I can manage that." 2 years later, she calls me and she says, "Remember that time you did a reading for me and I was so depressed over so and you said I would meet a guy that would be the right guy for me in a year?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, I never met anybody." And I'm like shrinking in my chair going, "Oh," and I'm saying, "I'm sorry." I'm about to say, "I'm sorry. I failed the prediction." And she goes, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm not calling to complain." She said, "That reading was the best thing that ever happened to me because I had spent my whole life dwelling on love, longing for love, never living my life as myself. And when you told me I was going to meet a guy in a year, I said, wow, just 1 year, I can wait that. And for the first time in my life, I got focused on who I am, what's important to me. I discovered I love to sing opera. And now I'm singing in operas. I'm so happy that I don't even care if I ever meet a guy again. And she said, and if I hadn't have thought that I was going to meet a guy, I would have never focused on that. I would have just sat around and pined away like I'd done my whole life. So see, sometimes it's the bad prediction that the person needs.
That's the divine providence.